everyone and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name is Deanna and I make videos on mental health and self-improvement. In today's video I'm going to be discussing the topic EMDR. I myself have had EMDR therapy and I'm going to get into exactly what EMDR is and how I went through it, why I went through it, and my post-therapy thoughts in this video.
And trying to remain so strong, I know it's good if I'm wrong. I got it,
So as I said, my name is Deanna and in this video I'm going to be discussing about EMDR. So let's start off with what is EMDR. EMDR is a therapy that is trauma-based therapy for somebody who's experienced trauma. I myself have had multiple different traumas and I do go into detail and story times on my channel, so if you would like some links they'll be in the description box for you to have a look at some other videos after you've watched this one. But just briefly, some of the traumas that I have had is I have been sexually assaulted. I have also had multiple different traumas relating to bullying whilst I was at school. So all the way from name calling to physical assaults to even an attempted murder when I was about 11 years old. And when I say attempted murder, I don't mean lightly. I'm not talking about it being a light thing. I don't use the word murder in just like a normal conversation. My bully tried to drown me, and if you'd like the story time, it is on my channel. So go ahead and click the link in the box above, whichever side it goes on. So the sorts of symptoms that I had. So I want to just kind of clarify in terms of this trauma therapy, I was referred to have EMDR because I was suffering a lot of trauma-related symptoms from my sexual assault. So if I mention trauma, I am most likely referring to the sexual assault that I experienced. And before I fully get started, please note that this is my experience, and if you are potentially going to have EMDR or think EMDR is for you, then please consult with an actual doctor who knows your case, because I myself am just talking from my personal experience. So the sorts of symptoms that I had that warranted a diagnosis or warranted me going off to have trauma therapy were things like flashbacks, nightmares, I was having panic attacks, I was having anxiety and a lot of like location-based anxiety. And when I say that, I mean locational, like whether it was in the same town that I knew my abuser from, or whether it was I saw a particular vehicle that he used to drive and, you know, it might not have been his vehicle, but it was the same make, the same model, the same colour, and because of that I would then panic. If I saw someone who looked remotely even like my abuser, I'd panic. So it was things like that, like it was locational or situational based anxiety. I also had anxiety relating just to going out in general, and obviously because of that you can't get on with your life, you can't do the things you want to do, and I just needed some sort of therapy that was going to help me to understand and to process the trauma that I was going through. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about EMDR in general. So EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing Therapy. And in a nutshell, it basically is the eye movement of going back and forth. In different types of EMDR, you may have different stimuli for that, but EMDR in itself is using the movement of your eyes going back and forth in order to refile those traumatic memories. So if you think of a filing cabinet and you think of all the traumatic memories as being files that are incorrectly stored, some might be sticking out, some might be, you know, just in the wrong place in general, and the drawers might not even be able to close. And if you imagine those drawers as your memories of that traumatic event, if you've got all of these files that are sticking out all over the place, you're not going to be able to file and remember the trauma in a healthy way. You're going to remember it in an unhealthy way, or you're going to be very traumatized from it. And by using the eye movement, EMDR uses that to then help to take each of those memories from the trauma, to take it out, to process it, to refile it in the correct way, and then to be able to close that filing cabinet at the end of your therapy. So EMDR can be done in several different ways. I myself had the touch type of EMDR, so I held two vibrating buzzers in each of my hands and they would vibrate in turn, sort of left right sort of pattern. I was able to change the intensity of the vibrations and I was able to change the frequency, as in how quick the vibrations were going. I did find it very, very weird because with the vibrations I was almost unconsciously and without even realising it, my eyes, I could feel them going back and forth, but I couldn't control it. So that was the weird part of the therapy. But EMDR can also be done through audio, as in through like 2 speakers on either side of you and going left, right, left, right. It can also be done via visual, so like a therapist literally getting a pencil or a swinging something or other and literally just swinging something back and forth in front of your face. It can be done with literally a finger and they'll say concentrate on my finger and they'll move the finger back and forth and your eyes will go back and forth. And those are the main types of EMDR. So now I'm going to move on to my experience of EMDR, but before I go on to my experience, I would love to know if any of you have got any of your own experiences. Have you been referred for EMDR? Have you had EMDR? Is EMDR something you're considering to be referred for? And have you had experiences of EMDR? Do you want to leave them in the comments? And I will say that with the proviso that you comment what you're comfortable with commenting. I will reply and heart every single comment and I will, have a chat in the comments with you about EMDR because, it is a therapy that I don't think gets talked about a lot. So my experience, I'm going to go right from the very beginning of my experience. So I was referred following a psychiatric admission. I was in the psych ward because I was having intense trauma-related sort of flashbacks and nightmares and panic attacks, and I couldn't be controlled in the community. I was very, very traumatised and I was not functioning whatsoever. So I was then stabilised with medication. They gave me an antidepressant and an antipsychotic and I was actually, being stabilised. And towards the end of my sort of admission, it was getting towards the end, and one of the student nurses actually said to me, do you think you'd benefit from a trauma-based therapy? And she gave me a leaflet to say like, this is EMDR, and she gave me a whole booklet on like, what is EMDR? And I read through it. I asked her some questions. She'd obviously researched this, and we had throughout my whole admission for this, this particular admission, me and her had a really great professional bond, and she was someone who I'd go to talk to, so I suppose the nurses just felt that maybe she was the person that would be the most helpful in this situation. So she did research on it and then she presented me with EMDR, and it was a very good suggestion. Initially I was very skeptical of it. Initially I didn't know whether I wanted to do it or not, and she convinced me to do it. So I went in and I had this questionnaire, and they said to me it's scored out of 90 and you need to score 50 or above in order to be classed as needing the therapy. But anyone between, I think it was 40 and 50 would be considered. 50 and above, you'd get the therapy irregardless, pretty much. So they didn't tell me my scores, they didn't tell me this information before I went in. They just said it's scored out of 90, just answer it as honestly as you can and we will tell you the information about sort of the levels you've got and how much you should score and all the levels and things like that at the end of the questionnaire. So I went in knowing it was out of 90 and I just, went in and ticked the boxes. It was pretty much a question and then it was like a tick box scenario, so it wasn't too bad. The questionnaire itself was probably like 2 sides of A4 from what I remember. And it had questions such as how many times in a week are you experiencing distressing thoughts? And it would have none, being a tick box, 1 to 2 days a week, 3 to 4 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week, 6 days or more or whatever. It would have a situation, a box, tick box scenario. And so the more days you would experience your traumatic events and distressing thoughts from it, the higher that would score. So for example, 7 days, or every day sort of thing, that would score 4 points or 5 points or whatever it scored. And then in the end of the questionnaire it would add up all the points and you would get a score out of 90. So for me, I scored, I think it was 74 or 75, something like that. And then when they came back in, they said, oh yeah, you only need to score 50. And so me scoring over 70 literally was you're traumatized. You are traumatized. You would benefit a lot from this therapy. And I was well, duh, I know I'm traumatized, but I didn't think I was that bad. And I basically got put on the waiting list for the therapy. As I was already in the hospital and the therapy was being held in that same hospital in a different area, it was quite a quick wait, to be honest. I didn't need to wait very long. I think it was very undersaturated. Not a lot of people knew about it, not a lot of people were being referred, so the fact that I qualified for the therapy meant that I was only waiting about a week for an appointment, and then I was able to have this appointment to have the therapy. So I had a total of 6 sessions plus a session at the beginning where the first ever session was like a background session, so I got to meet my therapist, and I also had like a timeline of events. So my therapist asked me right from like when I was a child right until the present day, and like she wrote a timeline of events, and then throughout that therapy we spent 1 or 2 sessions on each like major event. So even though I was being referred for my sexual assault and that was the main trauma, she even dealt with some traumas that I didn't even know were traumatic for me in the background, like the bullying when I was younger and like the bully who tried to kill me. Like I didn't even think that that was a trauma that was causing me pain, but it was, and she dealt with that. She, you know, includes that in the therapy, which I thought was a really, really good thing for her to do. And then at the end I also had the one ending session where she got me to do a second questionnaire to find out like the difference between the 2 questionnaires, and also like to talk about how I felt. And so in the total I had 8 sessions, but only 6 of them were actual therapy sessions. So now I'm going to move on to post-therapy and how I feel post-therapy. So I pretty much noticed a difference like within like 3 or 4 sessions of like the therapy. So pretty much halfway I'd noticed a difference, and I think that was partly because I chose to deal with the hardest therapy first, like the hardest session first. So I did like it backwards almost, like rather than some people would go from like the first thing they experienced right up to the most present day, which was the sexual assault for me. I decided to go from sexual assault backwards because I wanted to deal with the most traumatic thing first. So I think we spent like 2 sessions on my sexual assault, and then we spent 1 session thereafter on the different bullying and the bullies. But overall, EMDR has helped me to live a normal life. When I was being very highly traumatized every single day, I wasn't able to hold down a job. I was constantly sick. I was in and out of hospital every 6 months. I was just not very well at all. I was not coping. I was not receiving obviously the therapy I needed, and I wanted to make a difference in the mental health community. And following that therapy I actually went to study my first year as a mental health nurse, so a student mental health nurse. I have since dropped out of that, but that was for other reasons, and now I feel like I'm making a difference to the community by making videos like this. So I feel that EMDR has even allowed me to become a mental health YouTuber, because otherwise I would not be able to do this sort of stuff. I would not be able to openly talk about my traumas on camera. I don't know, I just feel that EMDR in a way has given me confidence as well. Like post EMDR has given me the confidence to grow into the person that I am and the person that I wanted to become. So post EMDR I was having a lot less distressing thoughts about my trauma, and now I don't even think about him. It's only when he's brought up in a conversation or we're talking about trauma in general that I even think about him. And now it's just something that happened to me. It's just part of my life, it's part of my story, but it doesn't define me. Whereas when I was being traumatized every day, it was me. That was literally the only thing that defined me, was what I'd been through. Whereas now things that I've been through are part of me, but they're not me. They're not the defining point in me. I am so much more interesting than my trauma. And I know that's weird to say because I'm on a channel talking about mental health, but I am so much more interesting than the traumas I've experienced. And I was able to grow into the person that I am today thanks to EMDR. So I'm going to end this video by saying that EMDR has helped me tremendously with all my traumas that I had, and I'm actually able to live a normal life now. I'm able to hold down a job, I'm able to get out of bed, I'm much less triggered by everyday events, and like I would say I very rarely have triggers. Like, you know, I do sometimes, of course, I'm human, but I am very much less triggered by everything that happens day to day. So that is it for today's video. Please leave me a comment as to whether this video helped you at all, if you learned something new, or whether I missed anything and you'd like to actually comment something below to let me know I've missed it, because I'm human, I'm going to forget things, but I have written notes down. I did write a whole load of like notes as to what I wanted to say in this video, but obviously I'm going to still miss things. If I've missed anything, please let me know in the comment section down below. So I'm going to end today's video here, but that isn't without saying that I believe in you even if nobody else does. Bye.
Just like you're young again, no, don't you cry. Just get back up again.